Coming up on the Empowered Woman podcast.
What's so interesting is that our blind spots are our biggest barriers, and we know this, right? And we have all these different ego defense mechanisms that are preventing us from seeing reality accurately. And so what we're purposely doing is bringing together peers at the same level so that they can mirror each other's blind spots while also having the ideal vision of themselves in mind.
Welcome to the Empowered Woman podcast, the #1 show on visibility strategies for women entrepreneurs. If you want to get empowered to be seen, stand out on social media, stages, TV, and more to make an impact with your voice and business, you're in the right place. I'm so glad that you're here. My name is Marcia Spurk, and I'm your host, professional singer and visibility strategist. Welcome again, and let's dive into today's episode.
There's a reason Pitchworthy is on every power founder's radar. It's the definitive PR book for women done with being overlooked. If you're ready for press, premium clients, and undeniable authority, this is your playbook. Buy your copy now at hearsaypr.com.
Hi, Jaclyn. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yay, I'm super excited to get to know you more and also your business, how you're supporting people. Why don't you tell us who you are and what you do?
Hello, my name is Jaclyn Orent. I'm the co-founder of Cultural Catalysts, a peer network for 7+ figure founders that helps actualize their desire to catalyze culture through turned on peer relationships that fuel their personal evolution and their cultural contribution.
I love that. Well, now I need the backstory. How did you get into creating this and co-founding it as well? So I'm curious about that as well. Tell us more.
Yeah, it's funny. I was on my walk this morning. I was like, I've invented something. How cool. I became an inventor. And that actually started within the last few years. I actually left sales leadership at a long time in consulting and had an experience with a multi-business founder that really changed the way that I saw how systemic change happened, which ultimately led to me applying to grad school to actually study how consciousness creates systemic change. It's funny, in that process, I actually got to meet some mentors. It's, you know, how when you pursue a new life path, that specific doors open for you.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened in this specific situation. So I got a chance to meet basically 2 organizational psychologists, one by the name of Richard Boyatzis, who's spent the last 60 years studying change, and then Dr. Benjamin Hardy, who many people know from working with Dan Sullivan, the famous entrepreneurship coach, writing books like Who Not How and 10X is Easier Than 2X, and most recently, The Science of Scaling. So I actually got a chance to share with them my thesis and my outcomes I've achieved with my clients. And they both gave me 2 different pieces of feedback, basically. And that actually cultivated into creating the Cultural Catalyst system, which is literally applying the science into how we actually create cultural change, and then not just create cultural change, but exponentially create cultural change.
Oh my gosh, that is amazing. First of all, that you went down on that path, got feedback from these amazing people, and then went off to create something. So what's behind the concept of creating this network? Because you could have gone a variety of different ways. I'm curious that path.
Well, that's a funny thing. So, you know, when I actually got a chance to talk to Richard, I realized basically he validated my thesis, and he was like, yes, you are accurate, and this is why, and this is what intentional change theory shows, which is what he's created and studied for the last 60 years. And then I basically realized that I was like, wait a second. So I'm not innovating, but am I iterating? Like, can you talk to me, Richard? And he was like, no, actually, you need to go read my magnus opus. So he sent me to basically the culmination of his life's work, which is called The Science of Change, which is how does change actually happen from the individual to the dyad, to the team, to the organization, to the community, to the global processes, and to the country level. Basically, how does that work specifically? And I was a little humbled, to say the least, because I really thought I was onto something. And then I also realized when I took a step back, you know, maybe I have something to learn from Richard, and maybe Dr. David Hawkins, who's already validated that consciousness creates systemic change. Maybe I actually don't need to rewrite the wheel here. Maybe I actually just need to listen, and I don't want to say humble down, but listen to the wisdom keepers that came before me and actually apply the science that they've already studied. And that's when I realized too, that I think that's actually a common message that a lot of people need to hear, is that we actually don't need to go rewrite the wheel right now. We actually just need to listen listen and receive. Like there's people who's dedicated their entire life's work to solving a lot of the problems that we have right now. We don't need to go study it. We just need to go do it. And we're in a place in our history right now, which I call a tipping point, which is actually talked about in intentional change theory, that we could tip in positive or negative direction right now. And so I really am a firm believer in us needing to go do it right now. And so in between, taking intentional change theory and then also what Hardy has studied, and actually how do you actually scale something exponentially, not incrementally, and then building that off of Power versus Force by Dr. David Hawkins, and taking the main things out of that system and basically creating an infrastructure that is applying the science to create cultural change over and over and over and over and over again.
Okay, I love that. Listen and then go do it. And that's the hard part. It's a lot easier to be like, oh, let me just study it forever, or create my own thing, right? As opposed to, doing the hard thing or the courageous thing, which is putting yourself out there and implementing what's already out. So what does the network actually look like? You said you serve and you gather these high-level entrepreneurs. What does it look like to join? What can somebody expect?
Yeah, well, so first of all, we want to answer why is it they would want to join in the first place before it's like, what is it specifically? And we talk about this in our masterclass, because one of the things that the science actually says, and that really surprises people, and I'll give you an example. One of my high-level clients that I've been working with for years, her desire for friends seemed like this nice to have experience. But in reality, one of the things that actually creates change from all the way from the individual all the way up to the global process is something called resonance. And what is resonance, right? We talk about people saying, no, we need coherence, or we need synergy, or we need resonance. But Richard says that we need resonance. And resonance is made up of three things: shared vision, shared compassion, which also means competence or capacity, and then shared energy. And so what does that mean? So that means we need resonant relationships with, in our case, cultural catalyst is a shared vision for certain people. Certain people want to be a cultural catalyst. It actually instigates a change process when they're like, oh my God, I want that language that describes me, because that is actually an aspirational identity that can serve as the fuel to actually sustain my change processes. And so when you bring together a group of people who have a shared vision, and then the second secret sauce that I learned from my client is we can bring someone who's a cultural catalyst, who's a level 3 leader who's producing results, and we can bring a cultural catalyst who's someone who's creating legacy together, but they don't have the same competence level, right? They have more of a mentee or a mentor relationship. But what the science is actually showing us is that it's actually neurologically and physiologically necessary. It's in our body to actually need peer relationships, because it literally creates the fuel. You put a fuel into a car to keep going. And that's actually the difference between what creates sustainable change and burnout. Is the actual peer relationships that fuel you. That's why friends are so important. And unfortunately, what got us here won't get us where we're going, because our current systems and structures, including our teams, our executive teams, our friends, our family, they're literally meant to keep us where we are. So that's why it's so important to have what we call the non-negotiable infrastructure, to be able to actualize your desire to be a cultural catalyst, so that you can actually be fueled in your change efforts to create the cultural change that you want to see. Okay.
Wow, that is mind-blowing. I love it. Thank you so much for explaining the why people would want to be connected. And I'm a part of several different networking groups, and I totally understand what you're saying, being at different levels, which could be helpful. But at the same time, when we're talking about smaller masterminds or whatever, somebody at your level, it makes a whole lot of a difference for accountability and all of that. And so I will ask now, what does this look like for somebody that understands and wants what you just described? What can they expect? Is it more of a virtual community? Is it,
So it's a bit of a combination actually right now. So what it is, it's a combination between an online monthly forum of 6 other founders in your specific group, in which we'll actually be holding a container for something called it's basically, I always call them leadership councils. But what the science actually shows us is that we need peers at our level of competence with a collective shared vision, so that we can activate each other. But what's so interesting is that our blind spots are our biggest barriers, and we know this, right? And we have all these different ego defense mechanisms that are preventing us from seeing reality accurately. And so what we're purposely doing is bringing together peers at the same level so that they can mirror each other's blind spots while also having the ideal vision of themselves in mind. That actually creates something called PEA, which is positive emotional attractor, which fuels and sustains the change effort. And then on top of that, we'll actually be integrating something called EFT, emotional freedom technique, a clinically researched technique that actually can help you rewire your nervous system to help let go of the cultural conditioning and ultimately help you release what's below your floor, which from Hardy's perspective, that would be the things that need to let go so that you can actually actualize whatever it is, the big, hairy, audacious cultural contribution desires that you specifically have. And so that's on a monthly level. And then in addition to that, they get one-on-one coaching with me. And I've been working with high-level leaders for years and delivering exceptional, literally beyond mind results. And the fun part that we're really excited about right now is we've actually brought in a master EFT practitioner and teacher to be actually providing group EFT to their organizations as well. So one of the things that the science tells us is that we need to be able to address multiple parts of the system, not just the leaders, but their teams. Because when we can help them come into resonance with themselves, we can actually create the fractal change that we really need at this point in history.
I love that. So you mentioned about the masterclass so people can understand more beyond what you're sharing with us here. Is that the best next step for somebody listening that is at that level and is interested? Hey, let me ask you a question. Would you like to be my next guest on the Empowered Woman podcast? Do you have a story you'd like to share? Want more visibility for your business on a show ranked in the top 0.5% in the world? Well, then head on over to martasburke.com/podcast guest for more information.
Yeah. So first of all, I want to acknowledge that some people just want to know what the science of change is. So I want to invite people to come listen to that. And yes, for people who are seven-figure plus founders who are wanting to be cultural catalysts and actualizing their cultural contribution, we'll actually be having them go through an exercise and having them prospect 10 to 15 years out to what does being a cultural catalyst mean, like in regards to their legacy and their vision and their values and the way that they spend their time, and then actually having them experience EFT and go through a transformational tipping point, and actually start that change process so that they can actualize that desire for themselves. And then they can actually come to that and sign up for that at culturalcontribution.com.
Okay, we'll make sure and have that in the show notes. And then in terms of the network, is that a monthly commitment? Is that a yearly commitment?
This is a yearly commitment right now. Okay. So right now we are building this out with the infrastructure and applying the science. And we're really wanting founding members right now who are wanting to participate to really catalyze culture right now within their teams, within their organizations, and within their communities. So we want people who are all in with us and who really want to actualize their full potential.
Amazing. Well, one thing that I find interesting about your work is that you call yourself a frequency architect. I'm curious into understanding a little bit more about what that is and how that fits into the cultural change.
Yeah, well, so one of the things that I wanted to go study in grad school was the connection between consciousness and systemic change, because I saw that within my coaching and my consulting practice. So the work of Dr. David Hawkins literally proved the difference between different levels of consciousness and how it gives life or it takes life and how it affects culture on a mass level. And so when I say I'm a frequency architect, we're actually integrating consciousness into the system itself. So the way that we actually create change and actually become a cultural catalyst is by literally deconditioning the cultural conditioning out of our nervous system to actually rewire ourselves to be able to have the capacity to lead with the resonance that we need to be able to create the new culture that we have. And so a lot of psychology and a lot of what I wanted to go to prove to grad school was that a lot of people are focused on CBT, EMDR, like the tried and true practices to be able to do this. The only problem with those things is most of them are addressing the mind directly, and they're not addressing the underlying consciousness that's creating the belief systems. And so they're limiting their ability to actually create change And for me, that's just unacceptable. We know how to create exponential outcomes. I've done it. I've seen it consistently. And there's newer ways that we can apply the science, both EFT and integration of David Hawkins' work to be able to actually create change quickly and effectively. So this whole idea that this is going to take forever, this might not work, I'm not going to be able to make a big enough difference, or like the culture is too long gone. Like, this is just not true. We have the tools that we need to, and we have the science that we need. We're not guessing here. We just need to do it.
Okay. Again, just do it. It's already been studied. It's already out there. I love that. Well, in the spirit of illustration and sharing stories, especially what you said, you do that exercise with entrepreneurs or business owners to look into the future and see how they will actually create this change. What is the client story that you have worked with previously, or that is a part of the network, whatever comes to mind, that you can share with us?
Well, the biggest thing, with one of my high-level clients has been in for my 4-year impact program with me right now. One of the things that I did, so she completed a lifelong goal in the last 2 years, something that she had been visioning for 20 years. And now she's like in the vision. I'm in it right now. Like, that's where I am right now. I'm actually on the property and in the retreat center. That's where this video is being taken care of right now. So, and sitting down and getting a chance to actually sit down and vision into what does her next iteration look like when you've already set out what you set out to achieve, right? And it's funny is from her perspective, she could have just kept, putting all of her energy into the land and into the retreat center for the rest of her life. But what we did was we actually sat down and holistically looked at her life, including business and impact, right? We're not just looking at things from a money perspective. We're looking at things from an actual contribution lens. And of course, money is the result of making an impact. So we looked at her entire life and got her to aspire to the next level and looked at what does that really look like tangibly? Is she asking enough of herself? Is she willing to pay the price? Will she enjoy doing it? And then, is this even achievable, right? That's one of those questions that we got to do. And we also got to update her core purpose statement, because the purpose that got her here is actually not the purpose that's going to actually actualize her legacy. Those are two different things. And so by the end of the process, we created completely new objective key results that also looked at health, that also looked at personal relationships, right? Because prosperity is all of these things. It's not just money and not just impact. So by the end of it, she looks at me and she was like, you just added 10 years to my life.
The holistic view, that is so important, especially at a higher level when you've already achieved so many goals and so much of the money, right? Like what you're saying, there's so much more that goes into happiness and creating impact and change. And
yeah. And she also is the one who inspired this. And that's the one who we realized, I was like, her desire for peer relationships is actually a neurological and physiological need, right? And for her to actually actualize her wisdom and turn it into legacy and is actually through having the right peers. That's actually what the science says creates it and makes it sustainable. So it's such a gift to be able to make sure that the people who are at the top, who have had to sacrifice a lot more than many people can ever imagine, they too can have peers and they too can have fun and they too can make the contribution and legacy that they want and enjoy their experience while they're here.
Absolutely. I love that. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us. I will have you also share how people can connect with you. But before, I like asking all of my guests my $1 million question.
Yes.
Are you ready?
$1 million question.
Or multi-million-dollar question.
That's probably more accurate. Yeah,
exactly. Jaclyn, what is an empowered woman to you?
An empowered woman to me. Oh my goodness. For me, an empowered woman would be from the lens of I can. So the belief I can. So that I can statement is courage, right? But I'm not just talking I can in general, because I can is like I can in my health. I can in my intellectual life. I can in my character. I can in my emotional life. I can in my spiritual and my family and my relationships and my money and my quality of life and every single area. So empowerment, it's sometimes I find that some people are empowered in certain areas, but not empowered in others. And for me, I want to raise that standard. And I want to say there's a holistic life success and an overall consciousness of courage in every single area that makes a woman empowered.
Oh my gosh, that is so good. Raising the standard of what empowerment mean by looking at it at a holistic perspective, which is what you had just mentioned before.
Yeah.
I like it. Well, tell us how people can find you and connect with you, the website, all that.
Yeah, so the best way to get a hold of me and to get to potentially work with me and my team is through culturalcontribution.com. You're welcome to follow me on Facebook. The name is Jaclyn Orent, Orent, or LinkedIn. Those are also possible places. But quite frankly, if you want to actually experience this work instead of just like my stuff, and actually become a cultural catalyst, I encourage you to just come straight to us and have an experience.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for the work that you're doing and also for coming on here and sharing with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. I hope this episode empowered you. And if you enjoyed the show, please join the Empowered Woman community on Facebook and share with friends or leave a review on iTunes so more people can discover this empowering message. Until next time, bye.